On the observation deck of the gleaming Galactic Concord station, a human named Kale stood apart. The air thrummed with the low chatter of a dozen species, a symphony of clicks, hums, and synthesized translations. Holographic star charts glittered, displaying the vast, civilized territories of the Concord. Kale's presence was a formality, a nod to humanity's recent, and somewhat reluctant, inclusion into the galactic community. He was their military attaché, a title that drew polite, barely concealed amusement from the others. A Borlean, its carapace gleaming like polished obsidian, approached. Commander Vrax was a living tank, a species evolved from apex predators. Assessor Kale, Vrax buzzed, the title itself sounding like a joke. Your delegation's report on your species' combat methodologies. We found it curious. Your emphasis on endurance predation, tactical flexibility. It seems a fragile strategy. Kale, lean and unremarkable beside the Borlean's bulk, simply nodded. It works for us. A slender, elegant Ilarian diplomat, her silver skin reflecting the starlight, joined them. Forgive us, Assessor, she chimed, her voice like crystal bells. But your physiological specifications are limited. Minimal natural armor, poor olfactory senses, a frankly pathetic bite force. You lack the Veneriai's venom, the Borlean strength, our own psychic dampening fields. The universe is dangerous. What do you do when you face a true predator? The small crowd of alien onlookers emitted a soft ripple of agreement. A Grell trader, multiple eyes blinking in unison, added, they are tool users, like many. But tools break. Then what? They become prey. Kale met each of their gazes, his own a steady, unreadable brown. He saw not malice, but the absolute certainty of creatures who had never known a true existential challenge. To them, humanity was a quaint, fragile upstart. The universe, Kale said, his voice quiet but cutting through the ambient noise, has never seen a predator like us. You define predator by tooth and claw, by venom and strength. We define it by outcome. The pursuit does not end when the prey runs. It ends when we decide it ends. 1,000 years ago, we hunted the most dangerous creature on our world to extinction not with fangs, but with patience and sharpened sticks. We called that creature a mammoth. Imagine what we do to things that actually scare us. Silence fell, then was broken by Vrax's low, rumbling chuckle. It was a patronizing sound, a spirited defense of theoretical biology. But this is a civilized galaxy. We have rules of engagement, laws of war. Your endurance would be irrelevant against a particle beam. Kale offered a small, thin smile that didn't reach his eyes. You misunderstand. I'm not defending. I'm explaining why the report is sparse. The most important tool of a predator is the one it doesn't show until the throat is exposed. He gave a slight, formal bow and walked away, leaving a faintly perplexed silence in his wake. They dismissed his words as bravado, the bluster of a primitive species clinging to a savage past. They laughed, not cruelly, but with the absolute confidence of those who believed the galactic food chain was firmly and permanently established. They were still laughing 2 cycles later when the Drex came. The Drex were not members of the Concord. They were a whisper from the dark between galactic arms, a species that had perfected the art of conquest through terror. Their ships were jagged shadows that blotted out stars. They did not broadcast threats or demand surrender. They simply arrived and began consuming. Consumption was the only word for it. They devoured resources, ecosystems, and populations with chilling, mechanical efficiency. Their warriors were biomechanical horrors, chitinous and fast, resistant to most energy weapons. They fought with a silent, hive-mind ferocity that shattered the disciplined formations of the Concord fleets. The Borlean strength meant nothing when 3 Drex warriors swarmed a single one, dissolving carapace with acid spitters. Ilarian psychic pulses slid off their hive mind like water off stone. Veneriai venom was neutralized by alien biology. Concord Station became a panicked hub of retreating fleets and shattered morale. The council chamber, once a place of dignified debate, was now a triage center for dying civilizations. Commander Vrax, one arm mangled and sealed in a med gel, snarled at holographic reports of another world falling. They adapt. Every weapon we use, they counter within engagements. They do not just fight. They learn, they evolve their tactics in real time. The Illyrian diplomat's silver skin was dull with fatigue. They are the ultimate predator. They end the chase quickly. We have no answer. In the corner, unnoticed, Kale watched the data streams. He saw the patterns others missed in their terror. The Drex were reactive, brilliant at countering presented threats. Their hive mind was their strength, an instantaneous network for tactical adjustment. It was also, he suspected, a potential weakness. He stepped forward, his boots silent on the deck. You need to change the game. Vrax turned, his multifaceted eyes swirling with anger and pain. You? This is no time for your species' philosophical musings, human. We face extinction. I know, Kale said, his voice unnervingly calm. You are fighting them on their terms. They are the predator here, and you have accepted the role of prey. You try to outclaw them, outshoot them. You cannot. And your proposal? The Illyrian asked, a desperate hope flickering in her eyes. Make them the prey, Kale stated. The room fell silent. They expect organized resistance, fleets, battle lines. Give them chaos. Give them a war in the shadows where their hive mind has nothing to react to but ghosts and traps. You have been trying to destroy their body. I propose we attack their mind. He called up a star chart. They are pushing through the Yaren Nebula. The dust clouds scramble sensors. Perfect. He began outlining a plan so alien, so counter to every Concord war doctrine, it seemed insane. No fleet engagements. Small, single-pilot craft, stripped of advanced tech, armed with primitive kinetics and high-yield plasma charges. Not to attack ships, but to seed the nebula's planetoids with remote-triggered bombs, sabotage drones, and sensor ghosts. Guerrilla tactics? Harassment? Vrax scoffed. It will barely slow them. It's not to slow them, Kale said, his gaze distant, focused on a calculus only he understood. It's to condition them. Every silent explosion in the dark, every false sensor echo, every destroyed scout patrol that never reports back, it's a pinprick. But 1,000 pinpricks make a creature jump at shadows. We bleed their certainty. We make the void itself feel hostile. We turn their strength, their interconnectedness, into a liability. Every piece of data they share is data about threats that are already gone, about ambushes that never come, about an enemy that is everywhere and nowhere. He looked at the stunned aliens. Then, when they are frustrated, paranoid, and their focus is dispersed across 1,000 phantom threats, we show them the real predator. The council agreed, not out of belief, but out of desperation. Kale was given a small, derelict corvette, and a volunteer crew of other humans, quiet, sharp-eyed men, and women who understood the old, dark art of war he spoke of. As they departed the station, the looks from the aliens were no longer of amusement, but of pity. They were sending the fragile humans on a suicide mission, a symbolic sacrifice to buy time. Kale's ship, the unyielding, vanished into the nebula's gloom. The Drex Armada, a swarm of jagged darkness, followed. Inside the Yaren Nebula, the war became a nightmare written in silent flashes and drifting debris. The Concord, following Kale's initial blueprint, launched pinprick raids. A Borlean gunship would unleash a volley of missiles at a Drex scavenger vessel and vanish into the dust before the mothership could respond. Illyrian stealth ships planted data spikes that broadcast screaming psychic static, causing temporary disorientation in the Drex ranks. But these were distractions, feints played by amateurs in a game they didn't truly comprehend. The real work was done by the Unyielding and its crew. Kale had turned the Corvette into a ghost. Its engine signatures were dampened to a whisper, its hull coated in sensor-absorbent material mined from nebula asteroids. They moved like a shadow within the greater shadow. They did not engage. Instead, they observed. For days, they tracked a single Drex hunter-killer pack, studying its patterns. Kale watched the hive mind in action, the flawless, silent coordination, the way a damaged unit was immediately supported, the way they adapted to Borlean assault tactics within minutes. See that? Kale whispered on the bridge, pointing to a data stream. When the Borleans hit their left flank, the right flank units instantly repositioned to encircle. The hive mind shares the tactical solution faster than thought. It's a perfect, reactive organism. So how do you beat perfection? asked Lieutenant Maya Cruz, his second-in-command, her fingers hovering over a jury-rigged weapons console. You don't. You make it beat itself. Kale's plan entered its second phase. Using salvaged DREX transponder codes and clever signal mimicry, the Unyielding began broadcasting false data. They made a small, icy planetoid appear to house a hidden Concord base. The DREX, predictably, dispatched a full battalion to cleanse it. As the DREX warriors swept the empty caves, the Unyielding remotely triggered a series of seismic charges, not to kill many, but to collapse routes and seal them in. Then, they broadcast a frantic, fake Concord distress call from the opposite side of the nebula, suggesting a flagship was crippled. The hive mind reacted. The trapped battalion's priority was downgraded. Resources were diverted to the new, high-value target. The battalion was left to dig itself out, isolated, and, suddenly, low on the shared priority list. For the first time, DREX units experienced something new: delay, confusion, and a faint, lingering sense of being ignored by the collective. Kale escalated. They hacked into a low-level DREX scout drone and fed it corrupted data, images of a terrifying, non-existent superweapon. The hive mind absorbed this, and entire battle groups shifted to a defensive posture, searching for a phantom. Paranoia, a human specialty, was being injected into a collective consciousness that had never known it. Then, Kale made his first direct move. He identified a DREX Hive Synapse ship, a vessel that acted as a regional nerve center. While the DREX fleet was chasing ghosts, the Unyielding crept close. They didn't fire a single laser. They launched a boarding pod, a crude, kinetic capsule. Kale led the boarding party himself. They wore no powered armor, just vacuum-sealed suits. Their weapons were not blasters, but compact coilgun rifles firing solid slugs, and monomolecular blades. They fought not like soldiers, but like hunters in a cave. They used the ship's own chaotic architecture against the DREX, creating choke points, laying tripwires with plasma grenades, moving through ventilation shafts. The DREX, optimized for open warfare and direct assaults, were disoriented by the close quarters, asymmetrical slaughter. Kale's team severed key neural cables, planted data scramblers, and vanished before a proper counter-assault could be mobilized. The effect on the hive mind was catastrophic. A localized segment of it went dark, then came back online screaming with corrupted, nonsensical data, images of human faces in the dark, the sound of heartbeats, the feeling of being watched from behind. It was a psychic virus, not of logic, but of primal fear. On Concord Station, the reports filtered in. The DREX advance had stalled. Their movements were becoming erratic, sometimes overly cautious, sometimes explosively violent against non-existent threats. They were, for the first time, reacting instead of acting. Commander Vrax watched the tactical maps, his injuries forgotten. The human's plan was not just working, it was doing something he thought impossible. It was making the perfect predator look afraid. The nebula had become a graveyard of doubts. The DREX hive mind, once a single, glorious chord of purpose, now thrummed with discordant notes of anxiety. Phantom fleets haunted its sensor periphery. Logistics ships vanished without distress signals. Scout drones returned with garbled data featuring strange, rhythmic vibrations, human music files, that caused disorientation in lower-tier processors. Kale and the Unyielding were the source, a parasite in the bloodstream of the DREX consciousness. They had sabotaged a refueling depot, not by destroying it, but by subtly altering the fuel mixture, causing slow, cumulative engine failures across a dozen ships. They had captured a DREX communications probe and sent it back carrying a looping, compressed packet of every defeat, every confusion, every moment of failure the DREX had suffered, forcing the hive mind to re-experience its own growing incompetence. The final stage of Kale's predation was psychological. He needed to manifest the threat, to give the hive mind a face to fear, a pattern to fixate on. He chose a barren moon, designation Yaren 7. Using the Unyielding's fabricators, his crew built a nest. It was a mock base, crude but visible, with humanoid heat signatures projected and old-style radio transmissions broadcast, simple, uncoded dialogues about the plan and the big attack. To the DREX, reeling from invisible attacks, This was a beacon. The hidden enemy had finally revealed itself. A concrete target. With a surge of vengeful focus, the Driex High Command diverted a significant portion of its nebula force, a massive claw ship, and its escorts, to obliterate Yaren 7. They bombarded the moon from orbit, reducing the base to molten glass. Warrior swarms descended to cleanse any remnants. They found only hollow structures, recorded messages playing on speakers, and one final, parting gift. Thousands of simple, mechanical minds buried in the ash. The resulting explosions were not powerful enough to destroy many warriors, but the chaotic, low-tech violence was a further insult. And while the Driex might was concentrated on a barren rock, Kale struck at the true heart. He had deciphered the hive mind's command hierarchy. There was a central processing nexus, a queen carrier, hidden in the densest part of the nebula. It was the brain. Every other action had been to pull its protective neural layers away. The unyielding, running on fumes, and the sheer will of its crew, slid through the now-thin defensive perimeter. The queen carrier was a leviathan, pulsing with sickly biolight. Its point defenses were designed to swat fleets. It did not expect a single, silent corvette to ram a boarding tunnel directly into its primary sensory cluster. This time, Kale went alone. Clad in a blackened suit, smeared with dust to avoid LiDAR, he entered the organic, pulsing halls of the Driex mind. This was not a boarding action. It was an infiltration. He moved not to fight, but to hunt. He avoided patrols, used the carrier's own nutrient ducts to travel, his movements a ghost in the machine. His goal was the central sanctum. He found it, a vast, wet chamber bathed in neural light. In the center, connected by thick, crystalline cables, floated the Driex queen mind. Not a warrior, but a vast, pulsating intellect, surrounded by lesser analyst drones. It was the source of the hive mind, the ultimate predator as the galaxy understood it. Kill did not plan a bomb. He stepped into the open, the lone, bipedal figure in the cathedral of alien thought. The analyst drones shrieked, and the queen mind's attention, vast and terrifying, focused on him. A wave of psychic pressure hit him, meant to induce catatonic fear. It found only a cool, focused resolve, a mind honed in a different kind of darkness. He activated a simple holographic projector. It displayed everything he had done: the false data, the ghost fleets, the psychological warfare, the trap at Yaren 7. He showed the queen mind its own reactions, its own growing paranoia and wasted fury. You were the galaxy's ultimate predator, Kale's voice echoed, translated through his suit's speaker into crude Driex pheromone signals. You defined predation as strength, speed, immediate consumption. You are a shark, efficient, perfect for your environment. He took a step closer, his coil gun held loosely. But, humanity, we are the wolf. The hunt is not an event, it is a process. We study, we test, we isolate, we exhaust. We make the environment itself our weapon. We don't just take the life of our prey. We take its sense of safety, its understanding of the world, its will to fight. We hunt the mind long before we ever claim the body. The queen mind recoiled, not physically, but in its essence. It finally understood. This was not a prey animal fighting back. This was a different kind of predator entirely, one whose tactics were as alien to the Driex as the Driex were to the Concord. It had been out-evolved. Kale raised his weapon, not at the queen, but at the main neural conduit. You are not being conquered. You are being culled. He fired. The psychic scream that erupted from the queen mind and echoed through every connected Driex in the nebula was not of pain, but of pure, paradigm-shattering terror. The perfect predator had met something that preyed on perfection itself. On the bridge of the Borlean dreadnought Indomitable Will, Commander Vrax stared at the tactical hologram in stunned silence. The Driex formations, which had been a tightening noose around the nebula's core, were unraveling. Ships drifted, powered down. Warrior signatures on planets winked out. The relentless, oppressive pressure of the hive mind was gone, replaced by a silent, echoing void. Then, the signal came, a clean, human frequency broadcast from the heart of the Driex fleet. This is Kale of the Unyielding. The Driex command nexus is neutralized. Regional hive mind is in catastrophic cascade failure. They are leaderless, confused, and combat ineffective. Recommend Concord forces move in for containment and surrender processing. The hunt is over. The silence on the bridge was absolute. Then, a chorus of alien voices, stunned, relieved, and deeply shaken, filled the comms. The Concord fleet, a battered but now hopeful armada, advanced into the nebula. They found not a war zone, but a graveyard of morale. Driek's ships offered no resistance. Warriors stood motionless, their collective consciousness shattered, reduced to instinctual husks. They were not defeated by a bigger claw or a sharper tooth. They had been psychologically dismantled. Vrax personally led the boarding party to the Queen carrier. The scene in the central sanctum was one he would never forget. The great Queen mind was alive, but its light was dim, flickering erratically. It was curled in on itself, a physical manifestation of trauma. And there, standing before it, was Kale. He looked exhausted, his suit scarred, but he stood with a quiet, unshakable stillness. Around him, the analyst drones lay not destroyed, but disabled, their neural links severed with precise, surgical cuts. Vrax approached, his massive form suddenly, feeling clumsy next to the human's lethal grace. He looked from the broken Queen to Kale, and the truth settled upon him with the weight of a collapsing star. The laughter on the observation deck felt like a memory from another lifetime. You broke them, Vrax said, his voice a hushed rumble. Not just their fleet. Their will. Kale nodded slowly, his eyes still on the Queen. They only understood one kind of fear, the immediate, physical threat of a stronger predator. We showed them another kind. The fear of the unknown, the fear of the shadow that follows you for days, the fear that the very rules of your world have changed. Their mind couldn't process it. It short-circuited. The Ilarian diplomat arrived, her silver skin pale. She reached out with her psychic senses towards the Queen mind and flinched back, a tear of empathic pain tracing her cheek. It is filled with echoes. Echoes of its own failures, of phantom fleets, of your voice. You didn't just defeat it. You haunt it. News spread across the Concord. The fragile, laughable humans had done the impossible. They had not just won a battle. They had redefined warfare. A new, profound, and deeply unsettling respect for humanity took root, tinged with a fear that was far healthier than the one they'd had for the Drieks. At the victory convocation on Concord Station, no one laughed. Kale stood before the assembled species, the same man who had been an object of pity. He spoke plainly. Do not make the Drieks' mistake. Do not see our lack of natural weapons as weakness. Humanity's predator instinct is not in our teeth or our claws. It is in our patience. It is in our ability to hold a grudge across generations, to study a problem from every angle, to turn an enemy's greatest strength into a fatal flaw. We are not the strongest or the fastest, but, when threatened, we become the most relentless. We are the hunters who will walk for 1,000 miles on a broken leg, just to let our prey know nowhere is safe. He looked at Commander Vrax, at the Ilarian, at all of them. We prefer to be friends. We prefer to build, to create, to explore. But if you force us to be predators, you will find we are the ultimate ones. Because we don't just want to win. We need to understand. And once we understand you, we know exactly how to end you. The galaxy listened. The title human was no longer a synonym for fragile newcomer. It was spoken in hushed tones, with a mix of awe and caution. They had laughed at him until he showed them the true, terrifying face of human persistence. Kale, the ultimate predator, had not claimed a throne. He had simply reminded the universe of a very old, very simple truth. It is not the size of the creature in the fight that matters, but the size of the fight in the creature, and the chilling, intelligent patience with which it decides to wage it.